Good morning, everyone. Great to see you. Thank you so much for coming. I'm looking forward to a great time with you today, and so appreciate those who do manage to stop by and are able to participate in what we do. So thank you so much for being here, and I wanted to share something that I'm busy doing at the moment. Some friends came to visit me not so long ago, and they brought me something that I really appreciated. It's a gift from their home country, and they gave it to me in the airport, and it was very encouraging to get a gift and to see it in this way. But one of them dropped it. So what I was presented with was something that was in many pieces. I don't know if you can see this. Where's this camera? And this is the situation that I'm left with. You can't see it, but I've glued it back together. I have my super glue, and I've been busy doing it. I've got a bit of a way to go, but I fully intend that at the end of the day, I will be able to have something to remember their visit with. And you know, I guess what I am saying here is that we have things that are fragile in our lives, and I guess there's one or two reactions here. We can throw it away, we can put it aside and just regret the fact that it happened, and enjoy the gift nevertheless, and the thought, and it's the thought that counts. Or we can do something about it and we can fix it. And, you know, if this is on a shelf somewhere, when the handle finally gets put back together, nobody's going to know that it was broken. And I get to keep a piece of memory here. My problem, I think, is that my first reaction is that I will just discard something that isn't perfect. And I think sometimes in our lives, it's possible for us to just give up on an aspect or a part of our lives that we are particularly disappointed in. But what I'm learning is that there's a lot I can do in terms of just fixing things, just making sure things are okay, that they're good enough. It's not about being perfect. It's about being able to function and do the job. And I think the next time I see you, I will be able to show you a pretty good jug back together again. And you know, I think that can be the picture of our lives as well. You may remember that last time we were together, we were talking about emotional dependency, and I tried to show some of the roots of emotional dependency and where this comes from. And we started looking at 8 principles, I guess, one of which, or the last of which, was prepare for the long haul. But there are other things like begin resolving the deeper issues, cultivate other friendships, all sorts of things that we can actively do to get ourselves out of emotionally dependent relationships. Now, today's session is about growing assertiveness. And what I'm saying in that title, Growing Assertiveness, is to express the idea that assertiveness is not something that comes by birth. It's not born into us. It's not genetic. It's something that is developed over time. And I suppose my argument is that in emotionally dependent relationships, there's a great deal of passivity. The person wants to receive, And yes, he or she wants to give in a certain way, but it's always within very defined ways that I'd have to say, certainly in my case, were very selfish. But if we want to go towards assertiveness that will help us in terms of the underlying emotional issues that we are experiencing, well, I think there's actually all sorts of things that we can do. And I'm hoping that in this session, there will be some encouragement about what we can do to do things right. Something I've been thinking about recently is to do with the underlying raw emotions that I would say we all feel, whether we are men or women, whether we struggle with homosexuality or we don't struggle with it, whether our issues are other than sexual issues. We all experience these things: hurt, frustration, envy. We can feel shamed. We can feel betrayed and jealous. Rejection can be very painful, being ignored and shunned. All of these things are part of normal human experience. Happy people can experience all of those things. Unhappy people can also experience those things. The thing is, very often, if we're not able to express them, if we don't find the right and appropriate way of dealing with these underlying issues in our lives, well, I guess it can go in a number of different directions. It can be translated into substance abuse, or perhaps it can go into yet another emotionally dependent relationship, or it can explode into general anger. And that's when it becomes problematic, I think, in our lives. Because if the anger isn't dealt with, what then begins to happen is that it goes towards depression. My arrows slipped there, sorry about that. And when we get into depression, then it becomes really difficult to know how to deal with this. So that's what we're on about today. We're on about looking at emotion in our lives and what to do with it. Remember, when you were a child, things happened to you, and it's quite possible that you had nowhere to go with those feelings that came into your life at that time. And then that becomes a problem, because it's as though, because there's nowhere for it to go, it's as though we just swallow it. There's no one to process it with. If traumatic events happen to you or to me, and as children we didn't take it to our parents, if there was no safe person where we could discuss these things because we didn't know how they would react to us, then it becomes something that we just swallow. And I think very often what we experience as people who struggle with same-sex attraction is many unprocessed emotions. And then we slip into depression, ultimately. And sometimes, as a way of resolving the depression, we think that the best way to deal with it is to act out sexually. And then it becomes a place where we can go, and it's escape. It's a kind of freedom that we begin to experience. Hello, Michelle and Rebecca and Matthew. So good to see each one of you. And Mushtag, thank you so much, from Pakistan, all the way from there. Mike Gascon and Fiona. Vanya, how good to see you. All of you, thank you so much for coming. Help me here by asking the right questions and catching me out when I don't make sense. Let me know so that I can adjust things. That would be really helpful. So we've begun to speak about the raw emotions that all of us experience in one way or another. And we've marked the fact that, it's not so important that we experience those emotions. It's more important about what we do with them and how we express them. Because if we don't learn to work in an appropriate way, it's possible that we will just explode over people around us and they have no clue what has triggered us. And our behavior and our reaction can be completely beyond their comprehension. They just cannot fathom what has upset us. Now, I want to ground this a bit more by showing you something that I think is worthwhile following up. You may want to look for, just go onto YouTube and type in the word assertiveness, and a video will come up that's been done by somebody by the name of Gasly. It's kind of a master session looking at assertiveness training, but it's specifically around assertiveness in communication. And I'm hoping that this is going to be of use to you. Hello, Karis and Kylie. Good to see you here today, each one of you. Thank you so much. So, well, I'm not going to unpack this in detail now, but here's the basic thesis, I guess, if you like. You and I, when we interact with other people, very often, if we're not careful, because of that pent-up emotion that I've been speaking about, that unprocessed, raw, like loose electrical ends inside of us, if we're not careful, they will come out in a way that will negatively impact on people around us. Very often, it's what we call passive-aggressive behavior. And it's, it's like somebody says, "Are you angry?" "No, I'm not angry." And everything about our demeanor says that we are angry, but our words, are contradictory. It's almost as though there's a basic dishonesty here. And we can pout or sulk. We become manipulative. We do things to get attention. We refuse to be direct. We can be very sarcastic. And in what we say, in a nuanced kind of way, it's almost as though we're aiming to hurt somebody. Think back to those times in your life, as I do in mine, when you've had interactions with your nearest and dearest, and what you have said or done really has let your own side down. You have reacted in a way that is just not consistent with the way you want to be. And sometimes that childish state of just reacting out of that raw emotion goes to another level. It becomes very assertive. It becomes very aggressive. I've got the wrong word there, folks. Can you believe this? Apologies for that. It becomes very aggressive, not assertive. Assertive is the good word. Aggressive is the wrong word. So it's possible that the passive-aggressive becomes aggressive, openly aggressive. That's when we start calling people names, or our sentences begin with, "You said this, you did this." We label people. We speak to their whole being, so to speak. We judge them in a very harsh and cruel way. And we don't just look at the one tiny little piece of behavior that they did, or the offending sentence that they spoke to us. We just write them all off totally, and we begin name calling. And if we're not careful, in some cases, it's possible that our aggression descends all the way down to physical threatening and even, hitting, striking a person. That's what aggressive behavior is all about. And if we're not careful, we can go from the passive aggressive into the aggressive behavior, and it doesn't take much to get there. I wish I could do some role plays. It would be so good to, to see this demonstrated. But the goal is not for us to be in the passive aggressive state or to get aggressive. The goal, and what I'm aiming at today, is for us to become assertive. Because when I'm assertive, I'm able to calmly state what the issue is. You aren't helping me enough on this task. I really need some more support. I want us to succeed together. And if we're going to succeed, we need to do X, Y, and Z. I think that what you are planning there is not going to work out. And here's the reason. You see, it's a different way of dealing with things. It's about giving feedback from the point of view that is not working for you. It's much more open, it's much more honest, it's direct. And have you noticed there's a change in the feeling of power, so to speak? When I'm aggressive, I'm trying to score a point. I'm trying to make the person believe that they are wrong. When I'm passive and aggressive, I really don't know how to react, but I'm very resistant to interacting in a positive way with somebody else. But when I'm assertive, I know what I want to achieve, and I know I'm not going to achieve it unless I can be respectful to the person that I'm dealing with. Okay, now, I don't know about you, but I watch things like this video on YouTube, and I see slides like this, and it's a whole mouthful, to take in, let alone the difference between where I am and where I should be. But I guess the trick is not to allow ourselves to get discouraged, but to simply remember, my goal is to learn to be assertive. That's not to cave in to what everybody else wants. That's part of the problem of emotional dependency. My task is to be able to represent myself well and to be respectful to the people around me. This is about good boundaries. And I'm suggesting, folks, that this is part of what we have to learn when we learn to stand on our own 2 feet and to deal with our issues. Now, I'm going to try and put this into a more concrete perspective. And to do that, I'd like to play an audio of the late Dr. Joseph Nicolosi. Because many of you will know that Joseph Nicolosi helped us to understand that if we are in an assertive state, a self state where we are actively engaged, we are assertive rather than being passive. In that state, in the assertive state, homosexual issues do not take a hold of a person's mind or their purpose. It's as though they are engaged enough with life that homosexuality kind of slips into something that they did in the recent past. And folks, there's such good comments here. I'm really tempted to read them now, but if I do, I'll get off the track. So forgive me, I'll come back and I'll do my best to read them. It's so helpful when you comment and interact with this material. Thank you very much. So Joseph Nicolosi is expressing a view here that is based on a lot of clinical experience with men who struggle with this area. when we retreat, when we are not processing with the underlying emotion and we become passive and we slip into what he called the gray zone, that's when we're in danger of acting out homosexually. And that's why much of the work we do is about exploring what happened to lead a person into a situation where just before they acted out in this way, what happened, what triggered them in that way. So let's have a listen and we'll go from there.
Okay, good morning. Can you hear me pretty well? How about now? No, not yet, huh? Does somebody turn on the volume or something? It took an hour to get a blackboard, so you expect sound right away too, you know? Anyway, don't get me started. Okay. We're talking about this book. I want to talk about this book. It's called Shame, Attachment Loss, and the practical work of reparative therapy. The phrase the practical work was a term that Freud used to describe the actual work that the therapist does with the client. So basically, this book was written for therapists who want to work with men and women, especially men, want to overcome the same-sex attractions. It's also for a book, this book would be appropriate for the person who is struggling with the issue himself, but it's a little more sophisticated with the psychological concepts. Over the years, we have learned, I've been doing this work for almost 30 years. Our clinic is in Los Angeles, Encino, California. We have about 135 ongoing cases. 98% of our clients are men who are dealing with unwanted homosexuality. We have 5 therapists. One is a woman who works with the lesbians, and the other 4, plus myself, are dealing with men. And over the years of our work and the consultation and our group supervision, the focus has become more and more on the phenomenon of shame. So much so that we've gotten to the position that when the client walks in, we say, don't worry about your homosexuality. Your homosexuality will take care of itself. All you have to do is focus on shame moments. And the entire focus is the shame moment. I'll say to a client who comes in for the first session, now this might be a man who's struggling with homosexuality for 20 or 30 years. I'll say to him, have you ever noticed that there might be 1 or 2 or 3 days or 4 days where homosexuality never occurs to you? It doesn't seem to be a problem. You just don't think about it. And then there are other times, maybe another day or 2 or 3 days in a row, where it seems to be a major preoccupation. And they'll all be able to relate to that. But then I ask them the question, why do you think this is so? And they always have the same answer, I don't know. And that's exactly the pivotal point between that state of no homosexual attractions versus the preoccupation with it. And we're talking about 2 self states, and we'll be talking about self states. And the self, our memory is in our body, it's not in our head. Our memory is in our body, it's not in our head. Let me give you a definition of boredom. Boredom, it could mean actual sexual contact with another person. You're not really feeling your feeling. Think about it. And then there are other times, maybe another day or 2 or 3 days in a row, where it seems to be a major preoccupation. And they'll all be able to relate to that. But then I ask them the question, why do you think this is so? And they always have the same answer, I don't know. And that's exactly the pivotal point between that state of no homosexual attractions versus the preoccupation with it. And we're talking about two self states, and we'll be talking about self states. And the self state is a mindset. It's a self-awareness. It's a consciousness. And we're talking about two self states. A is assertion, and the other one is homosexual enactment. And anybody who's dealing with this issue, maybe you can relate to this, because I don't want this to be a theoretical presentation. I want to try to tie it in to your actual experiences. The assertive state is when you are feeling clear, confident, you're expressing yourself, you're not anticipating anything negative coming along, you're being expressive and creative.
Okay, folks, the messaging I am getting is that it's intermittent. I'm not sure whether to carry on or not. Shall I? Christian is saying it's okay. Mike is saying it's intermittent. Matthew, give me a signal here. Should I carry on or should I leave it? It's an important clip. And just by the way, if you search on YouTube for Nicolosi assertiveness, you should be able to recognize the clip. It's about 9 minutes long. I'm going to try once more just in case. Somebody give me a signal if this works or doesn't work.
You're feeling integrated. You're feeling calm and centered. You're feeling your feelings. You're relating to others in an open way. What you're feeling and how you're expressing it is unified. You're connected to people and you're connected to yourself. That is the assertive state. When you're in this assertive state, there is no homosexuality. It could be a passing thought, but it's something you could easily dismiss. The homosexual enactment state is everything the opposite. It's driven, it's focused, your awareness is very closed in, it's obsessive, it's driven. You're not really feeling your feelings. You're driven by your compulsion, but there's no wide range of emotionality. So these are the two self states. In between, I'm going to have to use, I'll do it this way. That's basically it. Everyone who's at our clinic who is overcoming their homosexuality has this memorized. ASGZHE. And this is basically how it goes. The person's in their assertion. They're feeling good. They're connected. Things are going well. They're feeling optimistic about their life. Somebody does something or says something that creates a shame moment. And you feel it in your body. It's a collapse. And that's why the body is a central part of reparative therapy, the body work that we talk about. Because the client doesn't understand this intellectually. He understands this in his body. And when he has a shame moment, there's an actually embodied collapse. The shoulders drop, head slumps, energy drops. And he goes into something called the gray zone. The gray zone is a mood state. It's different from the others in the sense that these are self states. But in the gray zone, there is no self. The self is obliterated. So you can't say it's a self state. It's more of a mood state. And the gray zone is characterized by this kind of pervasive, dead, blah, disconnected, lonely, isolated, bored, frustrated, but not knowing how to direct that frustration. I was talking to a man last night, and I said to him, what are the feelings that precede, what are the feelings that you're feeling before you decide to act out? And he said, bored and frustrated. And there are many more in here. And that is because of the shame moment. This is all unconscious. What Freud called the unconscious, we now call the body. The body is the mechanism that is going on, that is operating within the person outside the awareness of the individual. And the treatment, the focus of the therapy is to make bodily processes, what Freud called the unconscious, now conscious. Let me give you a definition of boredom. Boredom is when I do not give myself permission to express myself. Boredom is when I do not give myself permission to express myself. Another way of saying that is when I am expressing myself, I'm never bored. Frustration is a conflict between anger and fear of expressing that anger, or fear of feeling that anger. And these are characteristics of the gray zone, which is preceded by the shame moment, which knocks the person out of the assertion and sets the person up for homosexual enactment. So when we say to if a client comes in and says, last Saturday night I acted out. Acting out, we just use that as a phrase. Acting out can mean masturbation with homosexual fantasy. It could mean actual sexual contact with another person. It can mean gay porn. Whatever that happens to be for the individual, we call it acting out, homosexual enactment. So when the client comes in and reports this homosexual enactment, I don't ask him what he did. The only question we ask him is, how were you feeling the moment before you decided to act out? And they always say the same thing. I don't know. I don't remember. They never remember how they were feeling just before they decided to act out. Because there was no self there to remember. You need an awareness of the self. The memory's in the body. Our memory is in our body. It's not in our head. If I say to you, in your shower at home, and if you're taking a shower and you want to turn the faucet for hot water, do you turn it left or right? I don't care the answer. It doesn't matter. This is not a group therapy session, okay? I appreciate the readiness to disclose, you know? The point is, you might have noticed you had to do with your hand for a moment. You had to kind of go, oh yeah. Does anybody drive a stick shift? Right? Where is reverse? You have to kind of go like that, right? Memory is in the body. So the person never remembers the homosexual enactment because there is no body there. He's shut down. He's dead. He's dead to himself. But when we get them to analyze this, they will talk about blah, lonely, dead, defeated, isolated, negative, discouraged, cynical, bored, frustrated.
I'm so sorry if the sound didn't work there, folks, but I would urge you to go to YouTube, search for Nicolosi and assertion, and look for a 9-minute clip, and you'll identify it by the image that I showed you that was playing. Otherwise, certainly go to josephnicolosi.com. You'll find a lot of very helpful material. But here's the point, folks. Assertiveness is a very important state of mind or state of being for individuals working with homosexuality. And learning to communicate in an assertive way instead of an aggressive way or a passive-aggressive way helps us to achieve that position of assertiveness that keeps us safe. So just to remind those who have come in here, my slide, unfortunately, has the wrong word. It should read aggressive, assertive, and passive-aggressive. And what I'm arguing is that in a kind of childish way, we sometimes react because of pent-up feeling and emotion in a way that is inexplicable to people around us. We look immature and childish. And if we're not careful, this can turn into a slightly more adult way of being where we become very aggressive. And it's as though we're at an extreme and we're way beyond balance in terms of how we are reacting to our circumstances or to a person who is trying to engage with us or express their needs. But when we learn to communicate in an assertive state, in other words, we learn to practice assertiveness, or the theme of this session today, when we learn to grow assertiveness in our life, that can help us very much in dealing with the emotions that are leading us in directions that we don't want to go. I think this is very important, folks. It will be underestimated and as being of little help for many people, but I know there will be those of you out there who will identify with this inability of knowing how to deal with things inside of you. Now, Nicolosi said some really important things there, that when you're in the gray zone, when you've lost the assertive state, it's almost as though yourself is obliterated. And those of you who in life have become very compliant, your way of dealing with conflict and your way of dealing with relationships is just, basically to go along with it. Just to make sure that you never cross anybody. And in that way, you kind of stay undercover. You don't draw attention to yourself. You don't draw the flak or the gunfire. You just deal with things as they come along, and you go along with what everybody else wants. And where's that going to lead us if we do that? Well, I wish you could answer. I wish there was time to look at the comments and see if somebody would be able to answer that. Where is it going to go if we live in this compliant way? Well, I think where it's going to go is that we're going to lose a sense of self, healthy self, and we're going to lose an identity that makes us unique and able to contribute to the world that we are in. So it's absolutely imperative for our survival that we learn to be assertive, not only as a sense of a self state, but in a sense of training ourselves so that we can get there. If we learn to communicate in an assertive way, I think we are building good foundations in terms of maintaining an assertive sense of being that keeps us engaged and keeps us vital and protects us from passivity and being led in a direction that we really don't want to go in. So where am I going with this? This is where I'm going. I want to recommend a book to you. I always recommend at least one book. Some people will hate this book and say it's something that we shouldn't use, and other people will know exactly why I am suggesting that we use it. Have you ever met that little Mike in you? That little Daniel, or that little Ashley, that little Matthew, that little Michelle? It's almost as though they're the ones who visit us when we're in that passive-aggressive state, when we are, as we say in the UK, throwing the toys out of our cot, where we are letting everything and everybody around us have it, as though we've got a machine gun in our hands. That's the little Mike, or the little Michelle, or the little Ashley. And here's the thing. As an adult, you and I have the opportunity to be able to help that part of ourselves that is still struggling with life. I said to somebody this week, I like a term I heard. Somebody said, "Me and my inner family, we are one." It sounds a bit new agey. I'm not into the new age, but I get what that person is saying. You see, it's back to this, folks. My broken pot, a precious gift from well-meaning people. I treasure this. And by the next time you see me, it will be fixed. But here's the thing. I could discard it because it's not perfect. But what I need to do is reclaim it. And you and I, we're trained in this world of the instant, in this world where there is so much emphasis on how we present ourselves, how we look. Do you like my haircut, by the way? I got the Amazon shears this week, and I did my best, and my wife helped me with the rest. So I'm just illustrating the fact that we really are governed by a world that wants us to look good and sound good. Everything we do, our images, the way we present our work, it's all about image. And I'm not saying it's all a bad thing, but it can be that we get so discouraged that we throw the pot away because it's not perfect. It's not good enough. Folks, what I'm saying is we have to fix it. And those of you who struggle with same-sex attraction, that's not the end of the story. You're not a victim. You don't have to stay there for the rest of your life if you don't want to. If you do, well, that's another story, and I'm sure you won't be watching this channel again. But those of you who do want to move on from that, or position it in a way that is more acceptable to your values, then listen on. Because what I'm saying is the work that we do is about fixing the problem. You know, when I finally get this fixed and I put it on the shelf, maybe behind me, you know, it depends on where you put it and what you use it for. If I fill this up with water, I'm probably going to have a problem. If I put something heavy in it, I will be challenged if I use the handle. But if I fix it up and put it on the shelf, it'll look great. It'll bring back precious memories. And you see, it's the same for you and I. We have to learn to be fit for purpose. We have to strengthen the things that we have been given. We have to work on the gifts that are really good within us. And we have to realize, well, you know, maybe I won't be top of the pole in some area. Maybe I won't achieve totally, but I can do things well enough. And it's the same with these sexual impulses that come in our direction. It's like they belong somewhere else, and if we're not careful, we will get engaged with them at some point, and then we find we're really discouraged and down. What I'm saying is we can work on these issues, and we can work on our whole sense of self, and we can work on how we engage with other people. We can work on what we can contribute to life and society. So it's not about perfection. I wanted to share something. Vanya likes my haircut. I wanted to share something, and I've shared this with so many people, so forgive me if you've heard it 50 times before, but I want to share it. I remember being at university in a methodology class, and it was towards my PhD or something, and I had spent many months in this classroom, and there were two young men in this class. This was many years ago, and I was drawn to these men. You know, to put it bluntly, I was attracted to them. I was attracted to them both sexually. And every week I would go through the same thing. I would get into class and my eyes would go in a certain direction and my mind would go in another direction. And this happened over and over again. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I planned. And I was in this cycle and I couldn't really do anything about it. Until the day I said to myself, this is crazy. This truly is ridiculous. And I did something that really surprised me. And if you knew me at the time, it would have surprised you too. So what I did was I looked for the next opportunity where I would go to them and introduce myself. This was a big lecture theatre, so you didn't know everybody in the room. And that's what I did. And I'm sure it was a stumbling attempt to say hi and to greet them and find something out about them. I knew the technique was to ask them questions about themselves, you know, and to do it in a way that wasn't overbearing or threatening or, you know, odd. And I tried my best to do that. And, you know, what I found, I hope this doesn't sound totally absurd to people, but what I found is that my attitude towards those men changed from that day on. And the reason I came to realize that this had happened was because I'd switched from a very passive kind of, okay, this is the way it is and it's always going to be that way, to an assertive state where I got up actively and went towards them. And the process of doing that demysticized or demystified the attraction, because suddenly I realized, well, these are just two other men. These are just two individuals. I can't remember, they have wives, or, you know, they know this mutual friend and they are studying the same thing as I am, and they're doing things, and they play sport, or they like cars. All of those things began to help me to see that I'd been daydreaming, I'd been fantasizing, I'd been you know, doing things in my head that had absolutely no reality or relevance. And when I went towards them in an assertive way, I don't mean in an aggressive way, I mean in a friendly way, in a way that was concerned about them, well, the mystery broke, and that spell, if you like, began to dissipate. So what I'm saying, folks, is it's very important that we can feel our real selves. And if we're in an assertive mode, that's a very safe way to go. And as a step to getting there, it's very important that we learn how to deal with our inner child, that part of us that is demanding attention, that will not take no for an answer, that pushes us in a direction that with our heads we tell it, we know we shouldn't go. And I just wanted to offer a couple of tools in suggesting how we might do this. So I'm not a transactional analyst, but TA, transactional analysis, is an important therapeutic approach that looks at human beings as being composed primarily of three ego states. In other words, the sense of self within human beings follows broadly this pattern. PAC, we call it parent, adult, and child. And the reason why this is relevant, if I can find my other slide, is because it relates to what we were saying earlier on about the passive-aggressive way of communicating, or the aggressive, remember this assertive word at the top here is wrong, and the goal is always assertiveness. So in other words, what transactional analysis is arguing is that all of us have an inner child, that part of us that has kind of imbibed the thoughts and feelings and behaviors that have come in our direction because of our personal development journeys. We call this the archaic child. It's very, it's sometimes confused. It's not something that is always rational. It's quite chaotic. but it's ancient, it's archaic, it's something that, you know, is a part of us, and it's always been there. It's the little Mike or the little Christian, or whatever your name is, substitute your name in. You know who it is. You've met him. And sometimes he's been really embarrassing. Well, here's the thing. What goes on in us is this, the critical parent within us, because we have not only a child, an inner child, we also have a parent. And this parent has kind of imbibed the feelings and behaviors that perhaps have come from others, often our parents. This is the no, no, no. This is the you should have. This is the are you kidding kind of voice that we all have within us. And if we live by the critical parent and we project that side of ourselves, we can be very uncomfortable people to live with. Just as if we live in the inner child, you know, that's a very immature place to be. Where we need to be is right with the center circle here, in the adult state. That's the place where we look at what's happening around us and the behaviors that we, you know, project are consistent with what is happening around us. That's the adult state. That's the assertive state. That's the safe place to be. You don't want to be a critical parent in everything you do. You don't want to be an immature child. You want to be adult, and you want to be assertive, and you want to engage with life. What am I saying there? I'm saying that yourself, your personal sense of being, who you are, where you've come from, is really important. And if you mistreat that sense of self, you can get into depression, you can get into self-harming behaviors, you can get into all sorts of things, and you can live a very unhappy life. But if you become assertive, if you bat the balls as they come, if you learn to agree and disagree with people, and you drop the you kind of thing, and you go with, I feel like this, and I wish you hadn't spoken to me in that way. It felt really disrespectful. Can we do that again? Because I wouldn't like to continue in our relationship in that way. You see, that's valuing who you are, and it's speaking respectfully to the person around you. And I think it can really help us to train ourselves to remain in the assertive state. I was going to tell you one other story, and I've got a few minutes, and the story has gone clean out my mind. So while I wait for that to come back into my mind, I'll have a very quick look at what is happening here on the side. Don't know if anybody is able to get some of the questions to the front of the queue here. Oh, well, you haven't all run away after I mentioned my haircut. I'm just doing my best, folks, as I'm sure we all are here. Now, what was that other story I was going to tell you? I'd love to hear some of your stories about, you know, the kind of critical moments in your life when something happened and the penny dropped. And when I say the penny dropped, you know, you caught yourself out. You realized that, you know, you were doing something that is counterproductive or self-sabotaging, and it was just a simple little thing you realized. And when you made the mid-course correction and your behavior went in the opposite direction, you felt a much happier person. So, folks, one thing that Nicolosi said here that I want to remember is remember that the pain, the memory, the trauma, well, it's registered often, but not always in the mind, but it will be in the body. The body is like, it's almost like the hard drive in your computer. You can clean it which way you like, but there is an entrenched track record in your hard drive and in the hard drive of your body that remembers the pain. Even if you've tried your hardest to forget it, it's there in your body. And that's why we have to take care of our bodies. We have to listen to the body. We have to, feel when the chest is tight. We have to understand when there's, pain and tension in our arms. What's happening in our legs. That's why when we come together in a group exercise, it's really good to relax and to put both feet on the ground, your arms by the side of the chair, to sit back and to breathe deeply and just relax, just escape from the hustle and the bustle of the world. Try it. You sit down on a chair, both feet on the ground, drop your shoulders, put your head back, lift it up, go from left to right, give it a stretch, and just relax and be at peace and listen to what's happening in your body. It'll do you a powerful world of good. I still can't remember the other story, folks. I know the moment we go off air, in 3 minutes' time, I'll remember. I'll put a comment in if I can, if it comes to me, or we'll deal with it next time. It was an important story that illustrated something. Isn't that amazing? Maybe it's just not meant to be spoken today. Well, folks, that's about it for today. I hope it's put you in the direction of paying very careful attention to the value of being assertive rather than aggressive or passive in our lives. For those of you who struggle with same-sex attraction, especially the men among you, I want to encourage you to look around for assertiveness training. You don't have to have somebody who believes exactly what you do about, the issues that bring us together today. Just find somebody who can teach you the principles of assertive communication and being assertive, that's going to kind of get you off the chair or out of the bed, heading straight towards the problem and dealing with it in a way that, make sure you deal with the issue instead of running away from it. Now, folks, there's often Christian folk who are watching these programs, and I'm going to pray before we end and give thanks to God for our time. And if you're able to do that, I hope that you will join me. Thank you, Father, for the fact that you've given us minds that can think, that we're able to discern, that we're able to leave error and go with truth. And I ask for everyone who's taken the time and invested in this opportunity that they would listen to their own bodies and their own minds and be led of you, so that they know what to do with their lives and how to act from this point on. Please would you protect us all from passivity of mind and getting into a bored state where we become in danger of doing things that we will regret because we so long for a jolt out of our boredom and passivity. So thank you for this time. Would you bless each one in Jesus' name? Amen. Thank you for coming, folks. I'm going to look through the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. I really appreciate your input, and I'm thrilled to have this opportunity to speak to you. Before we go, I guess I would be failing if I didn't just remind us about what will come next week. So this is the 5th session. We've been doing well. We're halfway through. We're dealing with assertiveness. But next week, all of this now is about dealing with the deeper issues and learning how to live in this assertiveness state of life. I want to take some time to look at cross-cultural competence. In other words, the communication skills that we need to be able to speak into other cultures, even into other cultures within our family. Families have different cultures today. It's quite possible there are different cultures within families. And so it's imperative that we learn to be able to speak across cultures or through cultures, because our goal is to want to be communicating because we want to be understood. We value what we stand for. We want to be heard. So how do we communicate cross-culturally? I think it's really an important thing to be talking about. Thanks again for coming, and God bless you. Bye-bye.